Good evening and welcome to the week 3 GoTo for Advanced Entertainment Law. Tonight's session, we are focusing in specifically on some of the upcoming assignments that you will have for the remainder of the course. So, my online cohort has been diligently researching court cases. My campus cohort has really been refining their knowledge on intellectual property. Now we kind of convene together for the second half of class where we get even more niche in your aspect of the industry. So the purpose of AEL is to really build a toolkit and a skill set to be able to help support you as you move into the industry, really refine your abilities to go through and research, be able to identify and stay on top of different changes in regulations and such. Now, as of this afternoon, you may have seen, as an example of keeping on top of things, you may have seen that the United States Supreme Court decided to lift the federal regulation barring gambling and betting on a federal level and make it a state-based decision. There's now discussion dealing with the federal government maybe stepping in and putting some sort of regulations in play. So it's important to know, although in this day, today, you see headlines about the Supreme Court and betting on sports, you'll see this law evolve over time. So, really, I want to teach you those skill sets that will last you beyond the class. And as part of that, we're really going to delve into the last few assignments you have within AEL. And our first assignment that we talk about, and we're actually going to go through, is the number one assignment where students coming back into AEL are looking to gain a lot of information. So we actually have had students already this year, a number of students come back and audit the class just to get a refresher, kind of a re-up on what's going on in the world of law. Legal documents, this assignment is one that a lot of students ask to be able to review archives or to gain additional information because this is an area where things decidedly will update and change. So if you have not done so already, those of you on the live session, you want to make sure that you have this assignment up and ready to go. I know I had one additional student just join in. So if you do not have your registration assignment up on your screen, please feel free to go ahead and take a moment and download it. I will wait for a second just to make sure we have everybody on the same page, literally, because we are going to spend about the next hour going through this assignment line by line. This is an assignment where you are completing a business registration, a copyright registration, and a trademark registration. The lion's share of the IP audits that have been reviewed are all honing in and looking at trademarks and copyrights, overwhelmingly so. Your business registration is not a way to protect intellectual property for your company. Your business registration is a way for you to establish your company and limit liability over time. To protect the intellectual property aspect of your business name, that's why trademark exists. So please keep that in mind. Your business registration is a formality with the state as well as the federal government for registration and taxation purposes to make sure that you're limiting liability. Your copyright and your trademark protects intellectual property within your business. So we want to look at that closely. Now, as you go through and scroll through, you'll notice the assignment is 10% of the final grade. And you'll notice on this second page all the different categories of point deductions. Now, keep in mind, anytime you're filing anything with the federal government, wouldn't it be great if they just took 5 points off? Instead, the federal or state government will go through, thank you for your cash, and will reject your application, and you're in a position where you have to completely start over. So this assignment is a great assignment to learn some of the skill sets and some of the know-how that you would need to walk you through this purpose. So for the assignment, you're going through a hypothetical. Know that for your business registration form, you would go through your Secretary of State's office within your individual state to register. You may have an Office of Business Development or some similar title, depending on your state. Most of our states, it's the Secretary of State's office. You can go through and register through through the business division, your business entity. We'll then look at the copyright form, which the copyright form for this assignment is based loosely on the electronic CO form. And then we'll also look at a streamlined version of the trademark form so you can get a feel of how to protect your intellectual property. All of these forms, you want to make sure you do not have any proofreading errors, so make sure you proofread these carefully. So without further ado, hopefully everybody on my live session has their assignment downloaded. We're going to go ahead and look at this document. You are welcome to go through and completely omit the lines or just go through and type around them. It does not bother me at all. I've had some students when I had this as a form where you could fill it out and save it, had some challenges when it wasn't in Word doc form. So you can feel free, work with me, whatever makes it easiest to go through and fill these out. I know some students will just highlight and type over or whatever is the best fit for you. So the first thing we're going to do is look at your company's name. So I am going to utilize Full Sail as my company for the purpose of this assignment. GoTo. For your assignment, you're going to put your own business information. But before we get started, I have one question for those of you who are on my live session. I've got a great group tonight. If you could type into the message box what type of business entity you are debating using for the structure of your company. Are you leaning towards a corporation? Are you leaning towards a limited liability company? For the purposes of final project, you need to decide between a corporate structure and a limited liability company what the best fit will be. So for those of you on my live session, are you looking for a corporation or an LLC for your business entity? Oh, great question. Thank you for asking. Okay, so let me give you a couple pieces of information as far as how your company may structure, if this is helpful. So I'm just going to put Full Sail University as my sample. So an LLC, absolutely right. Thank you for chiming in, is a limited liability company. Now, just an FYI, company is probably the most important word right here because talking to the course director for month 11, he is very, very specific. It is a limited liability company. Please make sure if you're looking at an LLC, you list it as a company. I would go through, list my business entity, put LLC, and a limited liability company is meant to serve as a hybrid between a corporation and a partnership. Now, a couple pieces of information to know about an LLC. Limited liability companies are only about 35 years old here in the US, whereas corporations have existed for centuries. So if you're pulling legal precedent, you'll find court cases dealing with corporations from 250 years ago. When it comes to LLCs, you're not going to see cases from 50 years ago. So this is a newer business entity. The goal was to make an entity that would protect you from personal liability through the limited liability company, but would provide you lots of flexibility because under LLC regulations, you have an optional advisory board, but you have no requirement for a board of directors. So the goal with the LLC was that it was more dynamic, you didn't have as many restrictions, but you got the same level of protection. Now, a few years ago, we had a court case where we had a limited liability company that was owned and managed by one person, a single member LLC. And the court came back and said if you are a single member LLC, you actually are not a business as far as liability is concerned, because the difference between your company and you as an individual is nothing, and therefore you have unlimited personal liability. So for those of you who are looking at forming a business entity where you are trying to shroud yourself from liability, but you are the only one in the LLC, you want to be really careful. So, although the LLC gives you a lot of flexibility, you don't have to have a board of directors, you still do have to have an annual meeting and have minutes and set goals and things of that nature. The fact that these are a newer entity and the fact that if you are a single member LLC, you have a reduced liability protection kind of throws up some red flags for folks, which is part of the reason why I will see companies that are looking at the corporate side. You can do this as Corp or as Inc. for your business name. And you can structure a corporation in a few different ways. An S Corp is a small, closely held corporation. So through your IRS registration, you would go through and identify yourself as an S Corp. Corporations have existed for centuries. Corporations exist in every country. Limited liability companies do not, which is another risk. If you're going to do a lot of international business, no, you are going to land in countries that do not have LLCs. Foreign entities will have corporations. With a corporate structure, you also have the ability, if you are structured as a C Corp, which is a large publicly traded corporation, you have the ability to franchise, which is helpful if you want to have a business organization with franchisees. You also can have sub corporations, meaning that you have a parent company with other companies below. In addition, a corporate structure may be a nonprofit. So if you have a charitable focus, corporation will come into play. One important thing to note, any of you who would be launching a company internationally, if you are launching a company here in the United States and you are not a citizen of the US, any companies that are founded by non-US citizens have to be structured as a C Corp. So C Corp, you have international founders or investors. For C Corp, you're large, publicly held, publicly traded. With an S Corp, you're closely held, you're domestically owned and invested. With an S Corp, you only get taxed when the money gets taken out. With a C Corp, you get taxed when the money goes in and when the money comes out. Corporations do require a board of directors, but in the past 5 years, we've had multiple jurisdictions, many states have changed that rule that the board of directors can also be the president of the board. They are interchangeable, which is super cool. So you can be a board of directors of one, you can be the CEO of your corporation, you can do everything all contained, which is super nice. So you want to think about what the best fit will be for your business entity, whether it's a corporation or a limited liability company. So this is the first decision you want to think about. For your company name, you want to put the extension. So if it's a corporation, you can put Inc. or Corp. If it is a limited liability company, you'll list LLC. And then for business structure, you would put limited liability company, S Corp, or C Corp, or nonprofit. So that's what you'll list in this space. Name of business, whatever the company extension is, LLC or corporation. And then for business structure, S Corp, C Corp, or nonprofit. So think about your liability, think about your expansion, think about where your company will be based, where your company will have heavy business dealings, because you ultimately want to make sure you have the greatest protection possible for your business to avoid legal liabilities. We then look at the principal place of business for your company. Now, I would request that you narrow it down at least to city, state, and country, if nothing else, or some combination thereof. Oh, fantastic question. Let's hit pause for a second. Awesome question. So I have a question about changing from one entity to the other. That is the best question I think I've been asked all month. So awesome question. If you are debating being one entity to start and transitioning to another entity, you do not want to do this. I'm going to tell you a couple reasons why. If you want to be a corporation in 5 years, If it's important to you to have international business dealings, be able to franchise. If you want to be a chief officers only exist in the corporate structure. If you want to be publicly traded, anything that's an advantage of a corporation, start now as a corporation. Do not switch. Number one, if you switch from one entity to another, you will lose all the history of that entity. So hopefully everybody on this GoTo is familiar with the concept of a credit score, your credit rating, your credit score, and the fact that it takes a while to build up that credit rating or credit score. If you structure as a limited liability company and you're in business for 5 years, and then you go out of business and you start a brand new corporation, the credit score dies when you close that other entity. In addition to that, you no longer can say that Full Sail LLC has been in history, or this company has been in business for 20 years. Because if it were Full Sail LLC and we switched to a corporation, I can't say Full Sail Corporation has existed for 20 years. The LLC existed for 19, the corporation's been around 1 year. So you lose all the history that the business entity would have. The other most important thing, and this is one definitely to think about, if you shift from one entity to another, and I have a client walking this path right now, and it's heartbreaking. To shift from one entity to the other, you have to take a step back from your business as a whole. You have to wind down, which means your LLC has to go out of business. You have to send letters to all of your customers, clients, suppliers, vendors, that the LLC is going out of business and that you are reforming as a different business entity, as a corporation. Then you have to take that liquidated LLC, the LLC that has gone out of business, and use that as the basis to build your corporation, which usually means your company is out of business for about 6 weeks. Now, if you think about any major company in the entertainment industry, you want to have ongoing business dealings. Heck, think about your favorite restaurant or coffee shop or anything like that. If you see a sign that says the LLC is going out of business, come visit us July 1st when we come back as a corporation. I don't know. You're going to have to really love that restaurant to be able to stick through. And they are going to have to reestablish their accounts payable, their accounts receivable. They have to re-register and restructure everything. So if you think in 3 or 5 years you want to be a corporation, start as the entity you want to be, because you're building credit, you're building history, you're building reputation, you're going through and establishing yourself in that space. You don't have to worry about canceling and liquidating and refiling and reopening and everything that goes into it. So if there is any debate at all of, do I want to start as this entity because I know in a few years I want to be this other entity, start off as, in this example, start off as a corporation, because to switch is going to cause the company to go out of business, to lose credit history, and lose history in the industry. So definitely good things to think about. Thank you for that rockstar question. And keep in mind, if it's important to any of you, chief officers live in the world of corporations. Chief officers do not live in the world of LLCs. Some students, that's actually a major deciding factor. So when it comes to principal place of business, narrow it down at least to the region if you do not have details. For address, some students have this already, some don't. You can go through and put 123 Apple Lane. You can also put to be determined, but at least narrow it down. So I'm going to narrow it down to Winter Park, Florida, and I'm going to go ahead and put just the zip code in the country. So if you have a general geographic region, I will even settle for state and country or some city and country combination. So that way I have some gauge as far as where your business will be based. If you have a street address, for goodness sakes, list the principal place of business wherever the street address will be. But if it's still to be determined, you need to at least narrow it down to a geographic area that's more specific. Now, under name and address of registered agent, a registered agent is anybody over the age of 18 who will accept paperwork related to the business. Your registered agent will accept the renewal paperwork for your company. Your registered agent will accept any litigation paperwork related to your company. So this needs to be an 18-year-old who's responsible, somebody who can open mail, somebody who can calendar things, somebody who can stay on top of stuff. You can pay an attorney to serve as your registered agent. It's an expense that a lot of new startups don't necessarily have the luxury to do. So what you can do instead is you can name yourself a business partner or anyone else over the age of 18. So some clients that I've worked with over the years, as an example, touring artists, will sometimes list a relative or somebody they know within the business to serve as their registered agent. Registered agent will need to have a physical address. Again, you can put to be determined. And this registered agent should be in the same state as where the principal place of business is, which would be the place where the company is registered. We then will look at the purpose of the business structure. And just a quick refresher for me here. Anybody on the GoTo session, just a quick Y for yes or N for no. Is your company a nonprofit? Do I have any charities? And I saw a question about changing the principal place of business. You can change it very easily as long as you stay within the same state. It's easy to change. Okay, everybody on my GoTo is a for-profit. So every single student who answered that they are for-profit, we are all going to have the exact same answer. This purpose is any legal purpose. Now, if you're a for-profit, you put any legal purpose, because as a for-profit, you want to be registered to do anything that is legally permitted to be done within the state. This will help you avoid costly amendments. This also helps you avoid the risk of fraud, because you can be very dynamic with your business. So as a for-profit, I can start off as a record label. I can pivot into working with performances in live venues. I can pivot into doing graphic design. I can then shift gears into hosting events, etc., etc. So if you list any legal purpose, the only way you'll violate this is if you're doing something illegal. So if any of you think back to when you're younger, those of you who are parents who might ask children where they're headed, or maybe even ask your own parents where they're headed from time to time if you're a caregiver, if they could turn around, or if you could turn around, I'm thinking back to when I was in middle school and high school, if I could turn around to my parents when I was walking out the door and they asked, where are you going? What are you doing? And I said, I'm going to go do anything that is legal. I'll see you later. And that was an acceptable answer. That would give me pretty much everything under the sky, as long as it's legal to do without any concerns. This helps you avoid fraud. You're not going to do anything beyond any legal purpose and not get in trouble. To violate this, you have to do something illegal. So if you want to go through and sell waffles in a food truck or be an artist manager, any legal purpose has you covered. There's no worries or concerns. For those of you who are thinking of structuring as a nonprofit corporation, a not-for-profit, your purpose is going to have a disturbing level of detail, because with nonprofits, we worry about fraud. So for those of you who are debate structuring as a nonprofit, think about if you've ever donated to charities, or if you've ever participated in any of the charity walks or any events similar to that. You want to know, what's the cause? How are they raising money? Why are they raising money? And how is this money being used? It's to help avoid fraud also. So if I'm receiving benefits and tax deductions, I want to make sure I know what is it that we do, how do we raise money, how are these funds utilized, and how do we then mobilize everything to improve our final cause. Definitely more distinctive than the for-profit side, which is any legal purpose. So you want to look at that closely. For your name and email address, for whom correspondence will be emailed, you'll want to put typically your own name. If the state runs into any challenges or issues, the state will email the person at the email address listed. So you want to make sure that you're listing here an email address that you will actually check. If you are registering with the state government or even the federal government, give them an email address you actually check. Do not give them an email address from 5 years ago that is your graveyard for junk email. Give them something you check, because the science behind this email address is where virtually communications are sent when the government office is also licking an envelope and putting a stamp on it to send to you. So you want to pay close attention to this, because this email address will typically receive communications usually about 3 or more days prior to you seeing the letter in your mailbox. So diligence is king here. Definitely want to stay on top of that. Last thing for your business registration are your founders' names. If you have more than 2, you can copy and paste and add more. If you have only 1, if you want to, you're welcome to go ahead and delete the other line. Here you will put your name, the names of any other founders if relevant, and titles. Now, if you are any form of corporation, S Corp, C Corp, or nonprofit, you will want to make sure that your title is a chief officer title, CEO, CFO, COO, etc. Or you can use president, vice president, director, or manager. For my limited liability companies, you are limited in being able to use president, vice president, director, or manager. So if I deal with the money in an LLC, I may be the president of financial affairs. I may be the vice president of the financial department. I may be the executive financial manager. I may be the financial director. If I am in a corporation, however, I can have the title of CFO. I can gain the title of chief financial officer. Definitely important to note. Any other questions dealing with the business registration side of this assignment? Questions, yes or no? If you move states, you then have to keep in mind that you're not only relocating your principal place of business, but you also will need to relocate your registered agent, most likely, which means that you will typically register in your new state. You need to be registered in the state where you're doing business. If not, you become a foreign business. And depending on the home state that would serve as your home based on that foreign business, you can run into a lot of fees and costs that can be detrimental to your business over time. I always recommend register and be based in the same state. If you're registered in a different state than where your company is based, anytime there's litigation, you are traveling to a foreign state to fight and hope that the local jurisdiction will protect a business that is outside of their jurisdiction, which can be a risk. You are so welcome. I appreciate your questions. Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions for the first form, highly recommend going up, clicking save. Take a minute, hit save. You're a third of the way done. You have your business registration done. So click save. That way, if you click the wrong button, you don't delete everything. Second thing we look to is copyright registration workshop. When it comes to this assignment as a whole, there are a couple of places where I frequently will have deductions. One is dealing up on the business registration. If you're a for-profit, any legal purpose, and you're done. Don't build on this. Don't expound upon it. Don't add anything else. Second place where I commonly see deductions is under Section 1 of copyright, because this says select only one. So think about anything your company will make that can be protected under copyright. This can be the written content of your website. This can be written content in newsletters. This can be promotional photographs that you've created. This can be music that your record label owns. This can include footage from your film. This can include your mastery journal. A lot of different things will fall into this space. Think of one thing your company will create. And just a quick note, this is not your logo. Your logo is a source identifier. We'll get to the trademark form in just a little bit. So not your logo, but think of an item that copyright is appropriate to protect, and you will select only one category. Literary works, cover writings. Performing arts, cover items that would have live performances. Theater, Broadway, things of that nature. Motion picture, audio-visual works will cover animations or any film or TV content. Visual arts or 2D and 3D artwork. Single serial issue will protect things that are released in some sort of episode, periodical, some sort of sequence. For single serial issue, think about your leadership portfolio and your mastery journal. You contribute once a month to those. And then lastly, your sound recording, the audio content. So definitely a consideration. For title of work, you will put whatever title you would choose. So if you have an existing working title, you can list that. If you want to list something that's really descriptive, you can do that too. So if I'm creating this to protect photography and I put in here AEL visual content and photos. Okay. This will protect 2D artwork. If I have a bunch of photos or infographics or things like that, boom, I'm all set. I'm good to go. Only selecting one thing. So please keep that in mind. Only one thing. You can also put anything else that you would want to put in there. So if I want to put legal magic vision board, you can make it as descriptive as you want. I can put this as legal site or something like that and make some fancy name. It's up to you. But you put whatever the title of the work is. This item for a serial issue will only apply if up here you put a serial issue. So if I check serial issue, I would go through and fill out volume number, issue, and if relevant, ISSN. ISSN is the Social Security number. Best way to think about it. It's the identification number for a serial issued item, and you would list frequency of publication. So as an example, if you used your mastery journal, you would check the box only for single serial issue. You would put volume 1, number 1, issue 9, since you're in AEL, so you should have a few of these posted already. I'm not going to list an ISSN, it's not relevant, and then frequency of publication is monthly. This only applies if it's a single serial issue. If not, you skip it, and some students even want to delete it. So that's up to you. If you're not using it, if you want to delete it, you're welcome to. If you need to fill it out, don't be deleting stuff, so just as a heads up. If you have a previous or an alternative title, so I'm going to go back to my visual arts for a minute. Remember, you select only one. I'm toggling between the two for the purpose of the assignment. I could put AEL some pics. Originally, my photos were AEL awesome pics. There we go. If there's no prior title, don't need to include it, don't need to list it. For year of completion, you can never list a year later than the current year. To register any content, this content has to be complete. So know that the date of completion, the year of completion, is the year that should be listed here. So if it's something that you're completing this year, you'll list 2018. Since your assignments are still a work in progress related to your business plan potentially, you may have this turn into like a 2020 thing or something further in the future. You want to make sure that this date is always a date that's current or in the past. You cannot register based on a future date because of the fact that you have to have the work complete to be able to register. So just an FYI there. For publication, if your work has been published, if you've placed it on a website, you've put it onto a distribution channel somewhere, you've shown your work at an art gallery, or you've done a screening of the content, or whatever the format may be, you will go through and list the specific date, the nation where it was published, either domestically or internationally, and if it was published as a contribution to a larger work, you would talk about and list what that larger work is, just so you get a feel for how this works. Once you are completed with section 1, and if it's never been published, again, if you choose, you can just delete it. No big deal. Once you are completed with section 1, please hit save again. You've got the nuance of the select only one, so save it. That's worth 5 points right there. So definitely want to stay on top of that. With section 2, here we're looking at author information. For author information, you either will list personal name or organization name. So I'm either going to put my personal name, or I'm going to go through instead and put my business name. One or the other, not both. Now, if you list an organization name, for those of you who would want your company to be the one listed as the author, meaning that the content creator was under a work made for hire, know that you'll actually check the box work made for hire if it's organization name. You may have a DBA. And I know from some of the IP audits, I saw DBAs popping into place. This is where DBA is most appropriate. This is the doing business as, this is the nickname for your company or your business. Now, for DBA, we actually had to surrender the ability to be referred to as FSU. Now, full disclosure, I did go to law school in Gainesville. I am a University of Florida grad. So when it was brought to everybody's attention, hey, we are never FSU. We are either Full Sail University, Full Sail, or you may see on some of our merchandise, if you go to the hanger, that we use FS. We cannot use the DBA of FSU because Florida State University has a tremendous amount of history with this acronym. So we will use FS or we will use Full Sail. You do not have to have a DBA at all whatsoever, just as a heads up. So if it's an organization name, you list the company name. If relevant, you list a DBA. If not, no worries about it. And you list made for hire. Now, if I want to register this under personal name, you're going to list your personal name here. And then you are going to drop down and list the year only of your birth. Now, if you want to list a fictitious year, you're welcome to do so. Trust me, I feel fairly safe saying universally, I'm older. Don't worry about it. I own it. But you'll list your year of birth or a hypothetical year, whatever you prefer. My number one request, however, because it's super creepy when I grade assignments, please do not list your personal name and then while you are alive in my class, list your proposed year of death. Super creepy. I usually get it a few times a year. You have no idea. Super creepy. It's not Halloween. It's super creepy. So please don't list an arbitrary year. If you have inherited a piece of work, which I know one of our campus make your case presentation cases is dealing with somebody who inherited work, then yeah, absolutely. If the person is deceased, you can list the year of death because it's a measuring life that then gets us that life plus 70. If you are filling out this form about yourself, do not list year of death. Not okay, not kosher. Absolutely have to list year of birth. So do list a year here. Do list the date. So that way you are covered in that space. You will need to list citizenship for yourself, either domestically here in the US or if citizenship is elsewhere, you would list that. You would list domicile as far as location of business. So if your business is based in the US, you would check US. If you are listing for author's contribution under personal name, I can choose anonymous if I do not want to be affiliated with my work directly by name. Some individuals don't want to be listed by their legal name, so they would prefer to be anonymous. Others may want to use a pseudonym. If you check pseudonymous, this is where you would put a stage name, a nickname, some alternative name. So if I decide to go by the stage name, DJ Legal Raps, awesome. I can go through, check the box pseudonym, and then any of my visual artworks will be known publicly as DJ Legal Raps. So that will then give me the ability not to be known by my actual personal name. I'll be known by that stage name. You actually don't need to select these at all. You can just use your own legal name and be set. If you're using organization name, however, remember if instead this is an organization name, with an organization name, you do need to check work made for hire because the entity is owning that work. You then will check boxes related to what the author created, and you will only check boxes that are relevant to the work being registered. So I selected visual arts. Everybody gets editing. Editing is a freebie. So just as a heads up, if you want to check a bunch of boxes, editing is free. So everybody can check editing, no worries there. If your work is part of a contribution to a larger work, you can list that it is a compilation. If it is a collection of works, you can list the collection. Since my work I'm listing as visual art, and I mentioned earlier it's photography is the example I'm using, I can check the box for photography. Do not check boxes that don't apply. So since I'm in the category of visual arts for my form, visual arts is not going to apply to music. It's not going to apply to lyrics, which are written word related to music. Visual arts aren't going to apply to sound recording or performance because those are going to fall under the SR or the PA space. Motion picture, audio, visual, those are going to fall under performing arts. Those are moving visuals. Those are not static. So make sure you're not checking boxes for things that don't apply in the category that you selected up above in section 1. You do not need to check a bunch of boxes. You can check 1 or 2 and be well on your way to being successful. Once you are done with section 2 with what the author created, again, go ahead, float up to the top and click send, or click save, sorry. We then will look at section 3. Now with section 3 for copyright claimant, we pivot a little bit because here you actually can list a person and a company. So here I can have Cassie Willard and I can have Full Sail University and I can have our DBA and I can list our street address, which I'm still going to put as TBD. And I list an email address. and I list a phone number. Oops. All right. And yes, I have a question dealing with collective work, and absolutely that would be defined as collective. If the claimant is not the author listed in section 2, you need to explain how the claimant got these rights. Typically, the claimant will get these rights via written agreement, so via a contract, either through the employment contract, work made for hire agreement, etc. The claimant is the individual who will be publicly announced as claiming or owning the work. The author is the creator, the claimant is the owner or rights holder. And then lastly, under section 4, we have the rights and permissions contact. This is the person we ask when we want to license stuff. So I gave a few examples in live lecture class today about friends of mine who work for different business entities, whether it's a commercial entity like a corporation or it's an artist estate, where they're going through and serving as the filter for permitting licensing. Now, the cool thing about section 4, if your claimant information is going to match your rights and permission, if you aren't using a third-party clearinghouse or somebody else, you're not tagging somebody who just rocked negotiation and deal making and having them be your rep, you are more than welcome. If section 3 and 4 are identical, save yourself some typing and just paste it right on down. So for a lot of companies starting out, your copyright claimant and your rights and permission contact are the same person. Over the years, this may become a publishing company or an agency or a licensing group or something like that. But to start off with, a lot of companies, it's the exact same info. So you can copy and paste between the two. When you have completed section 4, I'll give you a minute in case you have different info. Definitely hit save. Your business registration form is complete. Your copyright registration form is complete. We will then, once you click save, scroll to the trademark registration. So for trademark registration, the owner of the mark is the business. You do not have to list a DBA. That's up to you. You do need to select between LLC and corporation. You'll list the address. You'll list the zip code. You'll list a phone number. An email. Website address, totally optional. Some students have already obtained this, or you at least have narrowed down what your URL would be. And then you have to pick your mark desired. So for your mark desired, this is either going to be the words name, the word name, meaning that you want to safeguard the name of your company. Logo, meaning the visual manifestation of your brand. Slogan. Those are going to be your 3 main categories to pick from for mark desired. So name, logo, slogan, whatever you would prefer. You put an example of the mark. So if I put name, you then put an example of the mark. Trying to filter through for our businesses this month to find a company that's completely disaffiliated. I'm going to use an example of my mark as a children's charity. And I'm going to totally on the fly make a mark. I will never be a branding course director. I'm just letting you know. I'm going to name it Kids Corner Charity, just so I have a brand. So if I'm going through and creating Kids Corner Charity, whatever your brand name is, you'll go ahead and utilize your brand name. I just need a brand that's not an educational institution because I don't want to step on toes from somebody who has a educational concept. I don't want to give anybody an unfair advantage. So I don't have a kids charity this month, so I'm going to go ahead and lean into a kids charity. So I can go through, and at this point, I need to find the international class and description to figure out which international class, which category I need to register my brand. So if I'm going through, you're going to go onto the USPTO website. So I always recommend hit save one last time, just in case you open up a tab and we lose you on the live session. So hit save and then throw open a tab for uspto.gov. Make sure you go to uspto.gov. uspto.gov is where you directly would go to register trademark content, just like copyright.gov. And looking at some of the IP audits, some of the IP audits were actually citing to third-party websites for registration. So instead of listing uspto.gov, they were listing some random.com. Keep in mind that those .com websites are actually having you fill out the site information for uspto.gov, and you're paying them an additional fee to branch through their page and receive somewhat limited services depending on the page you go through. Always go directly to the source. uspto.gov is where you go for trademarks. So once you open up a tab, go to uspto.gov. Under trademarks, you will want to go to searching trademarks. One day I'll take that survey. All right. So once you get on the page where you go to trademarks, searching trademarks, I'm going to go ahead and click in this kind of butter colored box where I'm going to skip reading the information about the search engine. We refer to the search engine as TESS. TESS is our trademark electronic search system. I have utilized this program a lot. So I'm just going to skip all the backstory and I am going to go to basic word mark search. So I'm going to click here. Now, you have a couple different ways that you can search to see what international class your brand should be registered in. In lieu of checking to see if your brand is available, we want to see what class you should register in. So you want to type into the search term box names of large competitors. So if I'm looking for a big kids charity, I'm going to go through and type in the name of a charity that focuses on kids that's large and well known. So I may go in here and put in quotes, Boys and Girls Club as a place to start. And it's going to pop up some different brands. So if I click on this first one, this is International Class 35, Advertising, Event Planning, Management, Marketing, etc. If instead I don't want to look up Boys and Girls Club, maybe you can't find big competitors, maybe you're not sure, I can type in a description, children's charity. Now I have 22 options for children's charities. So if I click on Kids to Kids, the children's charity, this has International Class 16, which is promotional publications, and International Class 36, charitable fundraising services. I'll go to one other example. I'm going to click on this Dallas one. Dallas Children's Charities. This is clothing. And then I'm going to click on the one right above it to see which. This is International Class 36 charitable fundraising, namely organizing and conducting philanthropic events. So I'm going to copy and paste based on International Class 36. So I'm going to go over here onto my assignment, International Class 036, and then paste the description. As soon as I do that, I hit save, I'm all good. So if you're doing this search and your company is a record label, you may want to type in the name of big record labels. You may want to put in quotes the word record label, whatever will give you the best results. So I'll use Starbucks from time to time as an example. As you can see, it auto populates. So if I'm looking at Starbucks, International Class 30 is on beverages. If I go through and click on another one, International Class 33, distilled spirits and liquors. So this gives you a gauge for what your competitors are doing as far as their business dealings. Class 30 is coffee. And know that your registration may contain more than one international class. Let me see if I can find one really quickly that has more than one international class. International Class 42, International Class 11. So you're seeing all these different classes. It's a good way to get used to what international classes your competitors are actually utilizing. So if you would have any questions or need any help, please feel free to stick around until the end of the GoTo, or feel free, don't hesitate to reach out if you have challenges. But once you get your international class number and description, hit save. Most important, save, because this is the one where you save your whole document. Hit save. Give it a once over, see if you have any typographical errors, see if there's any areas that you skipped or you have some additional questions on. Make sure you hit save. And if you're happy with it, make sure you upload it onto Turnitin as well as FSO. This is the assignment. It breaks my heart when students don't submit it. So if everything looks good, upload this thing tonight. Get it done. Get it off your desk so that way you don't have to worry about it. Because we're now going to transition and look at what's left assignment-wise for AEL. So that way you can kind of preview what's coming up ahead. So the remaining assignments, and definitely check the platform to see if there are any variations with this. But ultimately, both of my sections, you need to keep your eye out for the leadership portfolio assignment coming up. You may either select an attorney who is not part of your family or the Full Sail family to interview, who potentially could help support your business, or look for a legal podcast to review. One of my favorite legal podcast websites is entertainmentlawupdate.com. Entertainment Law Update is hosted by Gordon Firemark. He also works with Tamara Bennett from time to time. And the podcasts that are listed on Entertainment Law Update give you a really great survey of what's going on in the industry today. It also gives you a really great overview of some different topics. So you can search through and look for things that are directly related to your business. But watching an episode can teach you a lot about intellectual property, contracts, technology, international IP issues, all sorts of different content. So if you choose to watch a podcast, you can use Entertainment Law Update. You can definitely look for podcasts on other platforms. My biggest recommendation is just make sure you're reviewing something that is directly related to legal impact for what you want to do in the industry. So make sure it's something where you're doing a liability assessment for what you would want to do in the industry. Not necessarily your business plan, but your industry goal. And for this assignment, you are creating a short review of takeaways. You can create it in any form of software you would choose. You just want to make sure that you upload your video onto a platform like YouTube, because that allows me to play through and take notes while it's playing. So please make sure you're diligent in that space. So that way I don't have to worry about downloading a file, losing audio, etc. Make sure if you're uploading it onto a platform like a YouTube or a similar platform that it's not something that's marked as unable to be accessed. If I get that dark screen that I can't click on, you'll get a note back with a 0 that says, hey, I can't play your stuff. But that gives you a really great idea to make sure that the content works well, because you can always check the link from a different piece of technology. So check it from your phone potentially, check it, have a friend check the link and see if it works when they're not logged in as you, to make sure the video will play, the audio works, etc. Make sure you are not reading. For this presentation, you can record this with you talking into the camera. Some students choose to complete the assignment, just them talking into the camera itself. Other students will complete this by creating slides, which you are welcome to do as well. So it's whatever your preference is. If you want slides, if you want your face, if you want both, it's totally up to you. But you'll be submitting a short video. Look at the rubric, look at the instructions, short video that is just summarizing a few key takeaways and how they'll benefit you in the industry. Your mastery journal. Everybody on the session should be pros at the mastery journal right now. You've got lots of experience. So you're going to be looking back at the goals you set for the course when you were in mastery and create that personal journey posting where you're talking in your journal about what your goals were, how the course met these objectives, exceeded the objectives, or redirected the objectives, how you can apply the information personally or professionally. Make sure you put the content, the body of your journal post into a document and upload it onto Turnitin. That way I can go ahead and grade it. Now, quick FYI, when you upload it onto Turnitin, Turnitin is very good at finding mastery journals. So just a heads up, when you upload your mastery journal onto Turnitin, if Turnitin sends you a notice back or you see a notice that the similarity is 98% similar, if it's going to your mastery journal website, we're good. If it's going to some weird third party's content, we're not good. So if you upload your content and you see there's a high level of similarity, when I go through and look at the similarities, I look to see if it's linking back to your journal post. So I just want to give you that disclaimer. Hopefully it kind of gives everybody some peace of mind that there is no issue. It's better for me to talk about something where you don't have an issue than for you to run into a hiccup and then be concerned that there's something wrong. So you are okay as long as it links back to your page. Then lastly, we talk about the research paper. For the research paper, you're reviewing one decided judicial opinion. So you have to have a court case that has a written judicial opinion. For my online cohort, for your research paper outline, you're reviewing 5 court opinions, 5 opinions that are written by judges or justices, because these court rulings will help you determine which case should be the focus of your research paper. So you'll have one judicial opinion in your research paper that you will review. You want to review the facts of the case, the legal issue that the court is facing, the legal analysis, the application of the law to whatever the case would be. This is the judge's assessment of what's going on. And then the ruling, the final decision in the case. And then you want to apply the lessons you learned from the case to your business in third person. So facts, issues, court's analysis, final ruling, and how this applies in third person. For your research paper, embrace the APA formalities. You need to make sure you have a title page with a header. Avoid first and second person. There is not, and I think you should, formality. The research paper should always be in third person. Full Sail University must. An educational institution should. A university may. It's not, I think we should, or you must, or something like that. Also, no contractions. You would put do not, it is, you would spell out whatever the contractions are. Quick tip, if I have anybody on the GoTo that loves contractions, I know I saw some reviewing the first round of documents. If you love contractions, go to your Word document menu bar and go to the Find search and search for apostrophes. If nobody ever has taught you this trick before, use this trick, because if you're searching for apostrophes, it will highlight anywhere where you have an apostrophe, and you can go back in, and instead of it saying don't, you can put do not or something similar to that. You want to include quotes and in-text citations every time you have 4 or more words directly taken from the source. And you should have a references page that's double-spaced with a hanging indent. I would highly recommend you take a screenshot of the image that you see right now. This is the most frequently requested piece of information from any of my go-tos when it comes to the last week of class. Sorry about that. Tried to mute my microphone and ended up switching my slides around. So for case citation, proper APA format is your judge's name, the year in parentheses, a period, case name in italics, comma, the court, period, retrieval date, and URL. Your research paper, since you are only researching one decided court opinion, can be just the judicial opinion. Any secondary sources that you would utilize, you run the risk of having biased or incorrect information entering into the fold. So with the cases that the Supreme Court were both hearing and deciding on today, depending on the news source, and I apologize, I only had about an hour today to be able to try and get up to speed with the court's very busy day today. But the Supreme Court, depending on the news source, it's like a Charles Dickens novel. It's either the best or the worst of times. The news sources are starting to put their spin on what the High Court was doing today. To go through and directly look at the court opinion, I'm not worried about a reporter saying this is really bad or this is really great or this is going to change the way we do X, Y, and Z. If I read the court opinion, I'm just looking at what the court decided. I'm the one who can then say this is good, this is bad. I'm the one who's doing the analysis and the evaluation and the application. That's the goal. So you only need the court opinion. You don't really have to have any other sources. Success tips, proofread, proofread, proofread. Copyright is all one word, C-O-P-Y-R-I-G-H-T. Lawsuit is one word. If you put the word law space suit, those are fancy clothes I wear to court. I saw both of those as errors popping up from time to time when I was proofreading. Be careful with contractions versus words. I saw a couple uses of word, W-E-R-E, that were some reason in the document as W-E apostrophe R-E. So it's we are the contraction, not were the past tense of was. So make sure you're not just relying on spell check. Spell check is going to see the word copy, it's going to see the word write, and it's going to think that's fine. It'll see the word paper, it'll see the word work, and it'll think that's fine. It's not going to realize in spell check that you need the word paperwork, all one word, to show that to register your business entity, you will complete paperwork with the copyright, all one word, copyright office. So make sure you're proofreading along. One of my tips, Writing Center is awesome, just as a heads up. One of my other tips is to go through and use text to speech. If you haven't used it yet, most of the word processing programs will have an element of text to speech. It's the equivalent if any of you have a smartphone that will read you text messages. It basically will do the exact same thing. So it'll read your paper to you. It takes it out of your voice and you can hear it in the computer's voice. When I used to teach final project years ago, I had a student who submitted a paper, and when he submitted the paper, it was about the operations of the business plan. And when the paper was submitted, it's a business that was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the operations document talked about that there would be 3 8-hour shifts. There would be a shift manager. If you were going to miss your shift, somebody would have to cover your shift, etc., etc. The entire document, the word shift, never had the letter F in it. So if you imagine SHIFT, but take the letter F out of it. Spell check never caught it because the letter F missing from the word shift creates an English word. So I was reading through this document about how if you're unable to cover instead of shift, if you're unable to cover your shit, you have to talk to your shit manager or your shit supervisor and have somebody else cover your shit. And it was totally and completely discombobulating. They meant shift, but spell check didn't know what was meant versus what was typed. So please make sure you proofread carefully. You also want to make sure that your APA citation format is accurate. You want to include in-text citations where you are citing to elements of fact, particularly if you have any quotations. And remember that your similarities should always be under 20%. So make sure you're reviewing your document because what the document flags as quotes versus what you use as quotes may be slightly different. So make sure you're putting your human element, your eyes and your fingerprints on these different aspects. So if you have any questions, my email and my chat information is up on the slide. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions you may have. I hope everybody has a fantastic night. My campus cohort, excuse me, I will see you bright and shiny early tomorrow morning in our typical classroom. And for my online cohort, remember that that research paper outline comes in by 11:59 p.m. tonight due to that one-day extension. So I thank you all for joining me tonight. I hope everyone has a great week. Don't hesitate to reach out before Sunday deadlines or other due dates that are coming up this week for my campus cohort. I hope everybody has a fabulous week. Thanks so much.